Hello, bridge builders! I'm here with some exciting news. The first volume of interviews is now available on Amazon.com. The link can be found at eatlunchandboardgame.com. I promise that all proceeds from sales of this book will go right back into this podcast and channel. Whether that is new and better audio equipment for the podcast, or video equipment for the YouTube channel, or even more games to review, the money will not be wasted. Click over to Amazon and get your copy of Eat Lunch and Board Game, the first course today. And thank you for supporting the show. In this episode, I'm joined by Catan Studio CEO Pete Fenlon. We talk about how playing a game requires a good beverage, not a bad beverage, no matter what kind of beverage it is you're drinking. He also compares playing board games and sharing them as the same way as sharing music. We might even get a definitive answer on how to pronounce Klaus Teuber's pivotal game. Check it out. Welcome back to Eat Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins, and with me today is Pete Fenlon, CEO of Catan Studio. Pete, how are you doing this afternoon?
Well, I'm now that I've had some coffee, I'm very well. I'm actually, it's a beautiful spring day here in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It's full of flowering trees and singing birds, and we're about to go into what I hope is a beautiful weekend. So it can't be too bad.
No, I hope the weather holds. It is a little breezy here in St. Louis, but other than that, it's hopefully it stays sunny and we have a good weekend.
As you can see, we have a nice studio environment to hang out in, and we're in a small city, Charlottesville, Virginia, about 2 hours southwest of Washington, D.C. It's best known for being the home of the University of Virginia. But it's also the home of the three of the first five presidents, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe, and the hometown of both Lewis and Clark, from Lewis and Clark fame.
Ah.
So it's a bit of a historic site. It's right on the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Shenandoah National Park is on the western edge of our county. It's an area known for its wine and wilderness. And I have not a stoplight between me and the Appalachian Trail, and yet I can walk to some really fine restaurants and over to a friend's house and enjoy a good meal and a game with ease.
There's nothing wrong with a good meal and a game, especially you said you got some wineries out there. Wine goes really well with gaming.
It does, as do a number of beverages, fine beverages, but we like to recommend fine beverages, be it fine water, fine soft drinks, fine beer, whatever. We just, we would recommend just as we would recommend that you not waste your time playing bad games. You don't waste your time drinking bad beverages, and a good game can be enhanced, of course, by a good beverage. So, one last little tidbit: if you go out the door here by where I'm sitting onto our veranda, the studio veranda, you can see Monticello, and up on the mountain there, and Thomas Jefferson loved a good game. So
not bad.
There you go.
Not bad. So as I said, you are the CEO of Catan Studio. What all does that entail?
Well, I'm within the Asmodee Group, head of studio. So I run one of the 20-some studios within the bigger Asmodee Group. Asmodee is the world's biggest independent game publisher, specifically devoted to games. We're now part of the Embracer Group in Sweden, which is Europe's biggest game company. But we have studios all over the world and distribution units all over the world. We're actually based in Guyancourt, which is near Versailles in France, just outside Paris. Our headquarters in North America is, or I should say in the United States, is up in the St. Paul, Minneapolis area, just north of St. Paul in Roseville, Minnesota. And the studios, of course, are scattered all over, and we're one of them. We like to think of ourselves as the sharp tip of the spear. We're typically, we're devoted to one brand, Catan, and our mission is to make Catan the most successful game in the world and redefine for the common man or woman uh, the idea of what a board game is, and grow the game culture, which is something I've been doing for now 45 years. Well, yes, 42 years, 42 years going on 43.
So how did you get into gaming?
So I was a military brat. I started life in Japan, moved every 3 years. I started playing games through sports. I was a huge sports fan, and I loved to play sports, loved to run around outside. We played a lot of sports, but we also played a lot of made up games and did a lot, made up, fantasy stuff and this and that. As we moved around, we realized it wasn't always nice weather outside. So my father in Germany, when I was living in Germany in elementary school, introduced me to 3M games and also Milton Bradley games. And these were kind of the Milton Bradley games were sort of historical games. They're sort of light war games, broadsides and boarding parties and dogfight, things like that. And then the 3M games were these really cool bookcase games, very
Oh
novel.
yeah,
And Twixt and
Twix.
Acquire and things like that. Stocks and bonds.
Choir's one of my favorites.
And so I started playing those when I was 9 or 10. And this would have been in the '60s. So you're talking pretty early. And I was very lucky to be exposed by that. And then I moved back home. I lived in St. Louis, outside St. Louis for a while. We played a lot of games there. I got into Stratomatic baseball and Stratomatic football and those games. They're really great sports games that, really cool board games. And then after a year in Oklahoma, I moved to Washington, D.C. area and went to a high school that had an experimental curriculum for my last 3 years in high school. So I had an odd experience where half of my school day for my sophomore, junior, and senior year was one class, and it was team taught, and they taught essentially your English, your music, your art, your history, your government, all that stuff in a sort of modular form as an exploration of mankind's experience. So it started out the civilized experience. So it started out in Mesopotamia, and you would do all of study Mesopotamia from all those angles. And then at the end of that session, before you went to Egypt, you would role play Mesopotamia, and the class, the kids in the class would actually take on roles, from that culture, and we did that for 3 years. And we ended with a mock election. Ran a mock election, a presidential election for the whole school, and that was kind of the coup, the coup de grace. So I didn't realize it at the time, but I was getting training in role playing and serious training in role playing before there was Dungeons and Dragons. And same time, we had this killer game club, and it was Thomas Jefferson High School. It's a very renowned school up in the DC area, and we just had a great group of folks playing, really awesome games. And we were making up variants of these games whenever we played them. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had been for the longest time designing games, whether I knew it or not. So I came to University of Virginia here, second year after getting over the initial hangover first year. Went to the game club. I discovered at the game club I was expecting to play some war games or some other kind of heavy board game, and I ran into a group of guys playing Dungeons and Dragons, and this was autumn of 1974. So this was the very beginning of the D&D craze. In fact, it was before the craze, and I liked the idea of role playing. I liked the guys that were playing, and I liked the idea that it was set in Middle Earth. The history professor Dick Bailey had set his game in Middle Earth, I didn't like the fact that Dick didn't know a lot about Middle Earth, and I didn't like the game system. It didn't make any sense to me. It was weird, and I didn't realize at the time it had been derived from a miniatures game from Chainmail and kind of evolved. But the idea was really cool, and anyway, Dick left to teach at West Point the next year. I took over the game and became the game master. I didn't like the idea of a dungeon master because we did a lot more than go to dungeons. And I decided to apply my backcountry experience. I spent a lot of time in the wilderness, and try and kind of bring that home in the game system. We started changing in a modular way the experience point system, the encumbrance system, the combat system, all that stuff. And I ran that game for years, and at the University of Virginia, and eventually that game gave birth to Rollmaster, which was my first commercial game design. And of course, it was a team developed game. I did a lot of the primary design work, but Coleman Charlton, Kurt Fisher, my later wife, Olivia Johnston, Terry Amthor, a lot of people, Bruce Shelley, who would go on to legend as part of the Age of Empires crew, all contributed design ideas. And in fact, three of the founders of Ensemble, the guys that did Age of Empires later, were in my game. So it was a heck of a ride, and ran that game for about 5 years. And then while I was in law school in 1980, my sister-in-law convinced me to start a company, and I started, got my gamers together, said, hey, how many of you guys want to start a company with me? And we founded ICE, or Iron Crown Enterprises, in April of 1980. And we began publishing adventure games, which were initially role-playing games, starting with Rollmaster. Later, we got the Middle Earth rights. We did all the games based on Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit for the next 18 years. We got Narnia rights, did some Narnia games. We did interactive books, choose your own adventure books. We did collectible card games, the whole shebang. And then about 15 years into that ride, we decided to really branch into board games. And we had done some Middle Earth board games, but nothing serious in terms of launching a big line. And Catan came along. A friend of mine had picked up Catan at Essen Game Fair in October 1995 when it first came out. And I had missed that show. I'd gone to Frankfurt Book Fair instead. And he brought it to our happy hour, and we played it. And I immediately tried to get the rights to the English language rights to that game, because I said, this is the best board game I've ever played. And Klaus Teuber, the designer, said, hey, I'm sorry, I already sold those rights to Mayfair Games, and too bad, kind of thing. And I said, well, love your game, and thanks a lot for this gift. I think your game is the game that should be the board game mentioned instead of Monopoly when people talk about board games. And Klaus, was very kind, and we left it at that. But about a year and a half later, Mayfair Games was having trouble, and we knew them very well, knew the family, the Bromley family that ran the company. And as a white knight, we bought them. And we bought them just for Catan, to be honest. Although they had a wonderful portfolio of role-playing games and other board games. And Klaus sent his son Guido to visit me here. He kind of interviewed us to see if we were worthy licensees, and I said, we will buy this company if you will transfer the rights, let us publish the English language version of Catan globally. And I said, I think I can, in the course of doing this, it may not be on my watch, but I think we can start the journey to make this the most successful game in the world. And he said, I don't know about that, but I think you believe that, so let's do that. And that's how I got into, I guess that was a long-winded way of saying that's how I got into gaming, but it's been a long ride. I'm sorry, Adam.
No, it sounds like a great ride. I just recently finished reading Klaus's memoir.
Yeah.
And so it was a very interesting story about how he got into gaming, and how Catan just kind of happened, and then he had no idea when he made it that it was going to be like, the thing it is now. I will
Yeah.
forever be grateful to Catan as it uh, got me back into gaming, and I've used it a lot with coworkers. That was what started my whole lunchtime gaming group at work. We used to be a race to who could get into the, because we only had one copy at the time, so it was whoever could get in there the fastest would be the first four.
Yeah.
Um, then we had a trophy. We had a
Oh.
3D. Yeah,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, we took our Catan gaming very seriously.
Yeah.
We had a Catan trophy, and so if you had the trophy, you had to come and try to defend it. And so it'll be branched out from there. But without Catan, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, talking to you and playing games all the time at lunch and meeting all the amazing people that I have met in this industry.
Yeah. I feel very blessed because when we first started ICE in '80, we were part of the sort of second wave of folks. To the second, folks in the adventure game business after Dave Arness and Gary Gygax and the Greg Staffords and the folks that did RuneQuest and Tunnels and Trolls and all that sort of stuff. We came in, with that next wave, Jordan Wiseman with FASA, Steve Jackson, um, certainly me and my crew, and we wanted to grow the game culture. We really felt like we had something super special, and because it was just so much fun, right? And just so positive, and it's just great interactive storytelling. Even if it's a board game, role playing game, whatever it is, it's storytelling, and it can be a short experience or a long one, but it's just a delightful opportunity to share fun with somebody, over a table, and how good is that? And so we thought in that, we would grow the culture. We just didn't actually think that it would get to where it is, and maybe even in our lifetime.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy how many new games come out every week on Kickstarter, how many new ones are produced every year from not only, the small independent ones from Kickstarter, but also from the Asmodee line and all the other game publishers out there.
Yeah. Well, we got a taste of it a little bit. I was sensing it even in the late '80s and '90s. I was going to Europe a lot. We did about 40% of our business outside the U.S. In those days, and I was going to Frankfurt Book Fair, and then later, and Nuremberg Toy Fair, and later Essen. And one of my old buddies, a guy I'd met at Nuremberg Toy Fair, is still a dear friend to this day, Jean Benet, ran a company called Flying Turtle Games in Belgium, and he had a distribution company, Big Bad Wolf, and he designed a bunch of cool games. He's best probably known for Shark, which is if you like Acquire, you'll love Shark. And I think Korea Board Games is about to bring out Shark yet again, which is really cool. Classic game. But anyway, Jean was one of the pioneers, along with Baron Bernhofer and some of the other folks, that at Essen, and with the Essen team, and the the game fair then was really small, intimate. It was just a few big companies and a bunch of small companies. But we were starting to see even then a lot of independent designers, guys who were making beautiful crafted games in their garage, or it being Europe, there aren't that many garages, but in some basement or loft or whatever. And it was a little bit like Kickstarter today. They were going there just to sell enough games to kind of keep going, and they were, it was of course not like Kickstarter in the sense that the folks would essentially crowdfund your game, but they were taking a risk that people would buy that first run of product, and they weren't, and a lot of them did. And we started to see that there in that German market specifically, but there were Belgians and French, Eurogames, a lot of guys, Eurogames to cart, that were coming from other countries, certainly the Netherlands, and we started to get a taste of what was to come, and well, I guess it's come. So
And here we are right in the middle of it right now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, uh, I just am very thankful for those pioneers, the Alex Randolphs, the Sid Saxons, the guys that did, those
The old
3M
three
games
M's,
that I
yeah.
talked about, because they were, initially the pioneers, and we're certainly surfing off that legacy. So.
So yeah, I agree. And those 3M games, the more I find them and pick them up for pennies on the dollar, what they're worth. It's
Hmm.
the more I play them, the more I'm like, man. And these games are 50 years old. Like Acquire is 50 years, almost 60 years
Yeah,
old,
exactly,
and
exactly.
it's so good. My
Yeah,
cousin, I finally got to play it, and now I can't stop playing it.
right.
It's such a great game, and I sit there and think, man, this came out in 1964.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's uh, variations on a theme sometimes.
Yeah,
It's always very hard to explain. What in life is original and what is derivative and what is collaborative, and it's all those things.
right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
There was a hilarious video called "Everything's a Remix," I think's what it was called, and it's like showing like these famous scenes from movies now, but then how they were done like back in black and white and silent films, and they're like the exact same scene sequence, and yet it's like, well, but it looked so fresh, but it was done in like 1920, so
yeah,
you
yeah.
can see that with some board games and some mechanics that get kind of taken and then morphed out. So
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes simple is better. Return to elegance sometimes finds you going back to the basics or whatever. You know, but like I was saying, with a simple game like Shark, um, that is a game that, like Acquire, it doesn't have a lot of mechanics, but it's just a timeless experience.
yeah, I always tell people, they're like, well, what makes Acquire so good? It's all about timing.
Yeah.
You have to have the right tile at the right time, and you can catch a windfall like you wouldn't believe. And if you don't have the right tile at the right time, you do not catch that, that windfall.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it is. It you know, um, it is important though to know what to do with what you have at any given moment, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
great games are games where, regardless of how bad it seems, there's always something to do, and there's always some way to move forward a little bit, even if it's just passing the dice. But you're generally speaking, there's some action, some way out, even on the worst turn. I mean, it may just be mitigating damage, but at the end, there's always something to do. And if you don't give up in the moment, you might find that little light there, that little crack, and that may be the difference in the game.
sure. I mean, when playing Katana, it's always the seven. When does the seven come up? Well, it only comes up when you have all the cards you need, but you have 9 or 8 cards, and the seven's inevitably going to come up, and you'll roll your own seven. That's the best part
Yeah,
about it, because
yeah,
then you shortchange your own hand, and then you got to go try to remember, okay, who had the other ore that now I got to go try to steal.
right.
Yeah, that I that's there's so much to love about Catan, and all the stand or the variants and the add-ons and the scenarios. We've played so many of them. We played so much Catan that we had to institute Monday was vanilla Catan.
Oh,
No expansions.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
straight Catan on Mondays.
yeah.
Tuesday on, we'd have 2 boards going at opposite ends of the table. Do whatever you want. But
It was.
Monday we had to play the straight up base game.
Well, I don't
So
know, you guys. We have a world championship for Catan in Malta in November. We'll have 70 some champions from around the world, and we're always hoping to see Americans who do play a lot of Catan, in that final
Yeah.
tournament because honestly, it's really exciting to see all those different cultures, guys from different culture, women, men and women both, a lot of women, which is great, more and more, coming from, these different cultures coming together, different playing styles and sharing fun,
Yeah.
and
I competed. Oh goodness, it's been 4 years ago now, I think. Here in St. Louis in one of the qualifiers, and I got to the
Mhm.
final table, and after opening placement, I'm like, "Yep, I am not gonna make it out of this game." And I tried to mitigate damage. But there are multiple ways to victory, right?
There are,
You can try the dev
there,
cards, you can
there
try
are.
to, get the cities. But I was like, it wasn't too long after initial placement in the first couple rounds. I'm like, this is not gonna go my way unless we roll a whole bunch of threes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, it's yeah, the placement, of course, at the start of the game is critical, and but I have played enough, and I can't play competitively. I'm not allowed to, but I played enough to know. Generally speaking, don't hang on to your cards too long, your resource cards too long. You know, even if you don't think it's the right thing to do, go ahead and buy the dev card. If in a lot of cases, just keep it moving, because if you keep moving, eventually, you might get a breakthrough, and you might catch a break, as they say. But anyway, the thing about Catan is it's not a determinative game. It's not. There is a bit of serendipity in the content. It has dice, and there will be surprises, and sometimes they aren't good.
So if I traveled out there to Virginia,
Yeah.
what game is currently sitting on your table? What's your favorite game right now?
Wow. Um, yeah, that's a really interesting. Well, right now on our table is, we just swept off Catan Dawn of Humankind, which is a game that's coming out this autumn, and I'll shill a little bit for Catan there, but that's a complete rebuild of our old Catan Stone Age game, our own Settlers of the Stone Age. But it's a really thoughtful. We sort of went back to the roots and rebuilt it. The initiative is on our table. It's an unexpected game from Corey's team, and it's a pretty cool game. We have, of course, a kind of a little rotation of sort of recent fun, and recent games. So we have Sagrada, and we have the Wingspan, and the sort of usual suspects, if you will. I have two other games that uh, I was sort of backing in Kickstarter that we're playing. We just played Paris and Bachacuna, and those games are out on the table off and on. Um, I guess. We're exploring some legacy games a little bit. So we just played round of the Rise of Queensdale, um, and some King's Dilemma, and I guess that's I guess that's where we are right now, in terms of like what's on the table right now.
Sounds like a good selection there.
Yeah, yeah, we're a mix. I mean, I don't get enough chance to go out and buy games because I am pretty busy. I just stepped down as the president of the local scout council, and I've got the studio to run, and we got a brand to build here. But and we obviously focused on the next Catan games, but my team, like me, they love games, and so Stephanie Newman and Morgan Dontonville, both of whom live here, come to the studio. Even with COVID and regularity, we have regular in studio game play testing sessions and meetings. They always bring new games, and so Morgan, who's maybe one of the biggest consumers of board games anywhere, a big backer of a lot of Kickstarters, and a great game designer in his own right. Is usually bringing one or two new games every week. So
Sounds like me.
yeah, yeah. So I can't even keep track of it. So we got to, I've got kind of a backlog of stuff. Here, Irish Gauge, Yukon Airways, Brew, Great Plains from Morgan, Glasgow, and of course Bloody Inn's been out a little bit for a while, and
Oh yeah.
and but Morgan's we're planning to have a session of that. Yeah, and I get recommendations from buddies around the world. We all share. Hey, this is a cool game I played. Knowledge all the time. It's kind of like sharing music.
Hmm.
Um, it's great to have somebody that loves jazz or North African rhyme music or whatever. Metal, whatever it may be. Telling you what they like because you may be focused on some other variety of music at the time, and it's just joyful to be surprised by a new game.
Yeah. Well, I want to step back a second. You said you just stepped down as the leader of the Scouts troop.
Scout
Um,
Council, actually, yeah,
Scout
yeah,
Council.
Virginia Headwaters Council, yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually how I came across your name.
Oh,
My coworker who sat next to me is really big in the Boy Scouts here in the St. Louis area, and he told me about the merit badge for game design.
yeah,
And he's
yeah,
like, "Hey, you might want to look into this."
yeah. Game design merit badge.
So I went and paid the whole $4.99 for the little book on the requirements for it, and you are quoted in the front of that book. And I was like, "Hmm, I should reach out to Pete and see if he wants to be on my show."
Well, there you go.
So I got on LinkedIn, and that's what I did.
There's
And
full circle.
yeah, and here recently, I am right now counseling one Boy Scout in his. He's going for his merit badge in game design. So it's been an interesting experience working with him and seeing the joy that game design is bringing to this young kid is it's amazing. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to meeting up with him again and see where he's at and the changes he's made. And he's working on trying to get to a stage where we can work on getting a prototype together. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's been a lot of fun working with him on that, and I'm hoping that this will lead to more opportunities for me to work with the Boy Scouts with
Yeah, I
the
think that, and
program.
and the Scouts now, it's not just boys now. We have girls as well. We had over 2,000 Eagle Scouts, girl Eagle Scouts last year, which is awesome. More and more, these kids are, uh, surprising us by with their amazing talent and creativity. And although we're traditionally rooted in nature as a classroom, that is our core, classroom. Weather, seasons demand that you go inside, and game design, of course, can be an outdoor experience if you're designing sports, as I said earlier, like I did when I was a kid. But if you're indoors and it's weather's kind of cruddy and this and that, what's better than getting together with some friends maybe or whatever and tinkering with a cool game idea and making up a game. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that actually was a couple of wood badge uh, folks, one from the West Coast, one from the East Coast, guys who were doing their wood get badge tickets. That's a kind of adult training program within scouting. Conceived of the idea of trying to do a game design merit badge, and they both did it separately. And then they said, "Hey, we should work together." And then they reached out to me in my old capacity as CEO of Mayfair Games because I had run Mayfair Games from prior to coming into the Asmodee group. Mayfair Games, incidentally, came into Asmodee as Catan Studio and then later as Lookout Games as well, because we also owned 3/4 of Lookout Games in Germany. And anyway, we had the Mayfair Games guys all excited about helping the scouts because I was at the time a scout master and a big scout, big fan of scouting, and myself an Eagle Scout. And we had a couple other guys really get into the idea of working on the game design merit badge, and then we found out Darwin Bromley, who founded Mayfair Games and had then been retired, was also big into scouting, was part of this initiative. And so, as it was a team initiative. There were a bunch of us, but Darwin certainly worked on it. He's now passed away, but he gave his all, and then Alex Yeager, who was then our editor in chief, worked hard on this on the merit badge, and of course I found it to be a labor of love.
I can see why. It's a good program. It's been a lot of fun. I like how hands-on it is for them to, come up with an idea, and you just kind of help them work it into a game, and then
Yeah,
let them go. And now he's working on trying to get it to a point where we can turn it into a prototype and push it further from there. So
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be
During
fun.
COVID, I think I taught about 60, well, actually two waves. I guess it was probably closer to 80 kids from around the world, game design merit badge. And we had kids I think we had a kid from Mongolia involved. And most of them finished, actually. A lot of them, a lot of those games were not great games, but, they were okay. Some were really kind of crazy. Some sports, some board games. We only got one computer game out of it, which is okay. It's really hard to design it, from soup to nuts, or from scratch, I should say, computer games.
Yeah, I can't. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
wouldn't even know where to start.
yeah.
So, do you play board games at the office on lunch hour?
We do. Not every day, because I'm often alone here on some days
Mhm.
because of COVID. We used to play, through the ice years, religiously, at lunchtime, and of course, always happy hour and that was always the case. We did that, of course, through the Mayfair years. More recently, we play at lunch every Wednesday, sometimes on Fridays,
Yeah, we
and
play every Thursday.
yeah, there you go. And it's a you can't get any better than lunch with a game.
No, no, not at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Not at all. So, what would be your go-to 60-minute lunch hour game?
Oh my gosh, um, there are just so many of them. I mean, I know Catan's an old gateway game, and for a lot of people, but I right now I love Catan Seafarers, particularly with the Helpers expansion. Um, and we're doing that mostly in the context. We're actually in the process of doing some future development, so we've kind of returned to our roots there. But it's a great 60-minute game. Yeah,
Absolutely,
you know, um,
no question.
a little, a game that requires a little more movement around the room in the sense of how you set up the things. Which we love is Decrypto. I don't know if you know Decrypto.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Um,
I always seem to be right there on the edge of winning it, and then we don't.
yeah, yeah. Well, you should. You should win. You should occasionally win. Um,
I don't think I've ever won that game.
okay. Well, it's your team's fault. It's not your
Yeah,
fault,
well,
right? Because
obviously.
it's a team thing. Um, yeah, I guess more recently, of course, we've been we've been, as I think I alluded to, that little rotation of games. Um, we've been doing. There's various really cool. I don't know if you know a game called Isle of Skye. It's a really good game. It's an awesome game, actually. It's a lookout game. It's a little bit. It may, for people who play Carcassonne, it may be familiar, but it's much deeper, and uh, and that's a particularly awesome game. So we've been playing a lot of Isle of Skye, and it's different expansions, and I'm a huge fan. It's a tile game, but it's a tile and placement game. But but it's deeper than that because there's bidding involved. There are a number of mechanics that you might be familiar with that come together there in a kind of a really joyful design. So lately, that's been, you know, we've been playing, goodness, Calliope's game on Magnificent Plumes, I think it is, which is just really, really awesome little card game. Um, and that's where you're building peacocks.
I've seen that one. I haven't played it yet, but
I
I've
know it
seen it.
seems odd, but no, it's just a fine game, and that may be more the 30-minute game than the 60-minute game. First time around, it's one of those 60-minute games. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we were playing a game of Red Dragon Inn this week, and it was the first time that anybody other than I have played it.
yeah,
And it took us the full hour to explain it and play it, but like after you learn the game, the mechanics work and it goes so much. It's like I always say with Catan, like the first time it'll probably take you a little over an hour because you got to explain the
yeah,
rules and you got to kind of teach that, oh, you can't do that, this is why. But then after a while, once we gave everybody their own set of dice, so we're not chasing them all over the table,
hmm
man, we could knock a game out in 45 minutes.
yeah, yeah. I think you can find in in the rhythm of the game, depending on who the mix of folks is. Again, you play Catan, anywhere from 45, 50 minutes to an hour and a half. So it's kind of but if you're moving along, it's about
So
an hour.
what is your favorite expansion or scenario? Like if you could set up a Catan board, what would be your setup?
Wow. Well, I confess that I'm quite capable of going whole hog and doing a Seafarer Cities and Nights
I've
experience.
played that one time and it is
Yeah.
simply amazing.
Seafarer
Uh,
Cities and Nights,
uh,
Seafarer Cities and Nights with helpers is a little bit of a wild ass experience.
no, I've not put helpers into it, but I played Cities of Night Seafarers one time and it is amazing.
Yeah,
Oh
no, it's
my
fun. It's deep.
gosh.
It's got a lot of depth to it. Hasn't just enough surprise.
Yep.
Helpers helps you take away, some of the serendipity, but some of the luck. It takes the edge off it a little bit. But I think it's really good to. That's just a great expansion for those who play a lot of games and who aren't who aren't subject to analysis paralysis, because
Yeah.
that's the main issue
Yeah.
with a lot of folks. If they get too many choices,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
I loved it because you had the islands, so then you had the pirate ship that could go around,
yeah,
and then you had the barbarians that are coming in when the pirate ship is rolled on the
hmm
third die,
yeah,
and you're paying out the extra cloth or
hmm
paper or coin, so you're building
the
up towards the
commodities, yeah,
metropolis. Yeah, the commodities you're building up towards the next level on your improvements or developments, and you got building across the hexes, and you got to get there quick because somebody else could cut off your way to an island, and then you got to go all the way around it. Longest road could be gigantic at that point
yeah, yeah,
if you're connecting all the islands. Oh yeah, that I'm trying to think how long it took us to play that. It took about probably 75 minutes to play it, but it
yeah,
probably
yeah.
took every bit of
It's
20
longer. It's a
minutes to set
longer.
it up.
Yeah, it's a longer game experience. I mean, you figure 90 minutes with a good team, 2 hours.
Yeah,
But that's you take your time. It's great. It's a really great game experience, and there's a lot of avenues for shifting gears, to win the game. So I really like that as a Catan experience if I've got the time, you know.
sure.
Um, and yeah, I have to say, I have really enjoyed developing Catan Dawn of Humankind. It's a really fun, fluid game. A little bit like, well, I mean, it just allows you to you're moving settlers and building camps. Because it's of course prehistoric. It's the human experience, settling of the world, but it's got it's a highly fluid character about it, and you sort of balancing, going out and sort of establishing camps in rich areas of the world, but you also need to explore technology and develop technology and take risks exploring and build and crossing into new continents and the like. And that's just to me it's just a fun game. And the current design, Dawn of Humankind, is much more fluid than than the original Settlers of the Stone Age. It's a faster, faster, more fluid experience without losing the depth of storytelling, which I like a lot.
You said that was coming out this fall.
Yeah, that's a October November release. Yeah, I should be out in October, I should say. Yeah.
I'll definitely keep my eye out for that one.
Yeah. Beautiful art, fantastic new art, and
Good.
some really cool, minis, 3D figs and stuff. We keep prototypes around. These are prototypes of like little camp.
Say little camp,
That's a little shelter, and here's some little prototype figs. But,
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's got nothing like a good Smilodon and anyway. But
so what color do you play as when you play games?
Well, and this is kind of tough for a guy who publishes Catan, but no, I'm a green guy. I like green.
And that's in the 5-6 player expansion.
It is, yeah, it is. But I've always loved green. That's my favorite color, and that's why I'm wearing a green shirt today. But I mean, I'll be honest. I've learned over the years not to get too worried about color, and psychologically, some people would say, and it's an extremely small edge, that if you play white in a Catan game, for instance, or in any game, really, people don't notice you as much. If you can play gray or white, or black, some sort of brown, you just sort of blend in, and you aren't noticed, and whereas if you are playing red, it may be the other opposite. And blue in a low light situation, you're going to be more noticeable than anybody else. So.
No, that's awesome. So how about a hidden gem game?
Oh gosh,
game that you don't think gets enough credit for being as great as it is.
Wow, there are a ton of them. And this is kind of, going back in time a little bit. I'm going to kind of go back in time and work my way forward. Certainly, we've already talked a little bit about Acquire and those 3M games, but certainly more recently, a great card game like Six Nymph, which is a Wolfgang Kramer game. It's a card game.
Oh, yeah.
It's I think an unsung gem. It's well sung in Germany, but not so much anywhere else. Which is
Amigo has that, right?
Yeah, Amigo. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We used to publish it, I think, with Amigo at Mayfair Games. Orzupa, which I really loved. It's a Doris and Frank game. It's about developing multi-cell, starting with single cell and developing multi-cell critters. I'm a huge fan of the GIPF project, the GIPF GIPF project from Chris Burham, who's I think a great, he's as good an abstract game designer as any man or woman that's ever lived. Chris is a Belgian guy from Antwerp, and GIPF and Zerts and Yinch are all unsung games. They're fantastic 2-player abstract games. They're just unbelievably good. And if you just want a 2-player experience, a little bit different than normal, I shout out. I think more recently, certainly Martin Wallace's Steam game which is a very, very tight game design, very unforgiving at times, but it's a absolutely brilliant game. And the Lords of Vegas, which they've just kickstarted again.
Is that the hotel one?
What?
Is that the hotel one or the casino one where you're trying to build?
Casino one, yeah. Lords of Vegas is this really fun kind of, kind of bizarre and fun ride, and they've got we've got some expansions up, and a couple of others that have come out. And Lords of Vegas is a really good casual experience. It's a lot of fun with people who aren't hardcore gamers, and I think that's, if you're playing 2-player, I think Patchwork is very much an unsung gem. Although it's, I think, kind of getting traction now more and more. And Uwe Rosenberg, who did Agricola and
Hmm.
Caverna, and did that game. He also did another kind of semi-sung game that I think people should always think about having in their library, and that's Bonanza, which is a wonderful,
That just came
wonderful.
back out with a new edition.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are countless,
Oh, sure.
countless unsung games out there, and
Yeah.
I haven't played most of them.
No, I believe me. I've got a whole shelf of games I haven't played, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
just sit there. They look really pretty.
yeah, yeah. I'm hoping I'll get a chance to explore them again. Yeah, but I will do a shout out for Chris, because Chris, I don't know how easy his games are to find these days, but if you can find any one of the Chris Berm games, whether they're a gift project or not, you'll almost always find they're really brilliant and fun at the same time.
Yeah, I've seen his games actually. They're like Gip, Vaughn,
Yeah, Devon, yeah,
Yinch.
Inch.
Yeah,
They
those are the
have
yeah.
crazy names, by most people's, but yeah, they all have kind of a meta game going as well. Chris has a this idea in the quote GIF project, where if there is a legacy factor, you can play GIF, and then the winner of that game can then carry some element of that game into the next game, and it's a really kind of a cool idea.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So you've already kind of hit on my last question, which is Kickstarter. You are a
Yeah,
Kickstarter backer.
yeah.
Have you yourself ever run a Kickstarter campaign?
Well, I honestly, I've done a few projects outside the board. I do a lot of game design outside of the traditional market, right? We just, I've done alternative reality game design. Uh, Actually, a game I did with Jordan Wiseman, Alon Lee, and Sean Stewart back in 2001, called AI, just won a Peabody Award, which is we're excited about. Um, so, I've always been interested in storytelling outside the traditional boundaries of our business. And one time we did a game called Cones of Dunshire. We designed that game for the TV series Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
And the lead designer actually was Morgan Dontville, and Coleman Charlton was sort of the co-designer. You know, I was the producer and did a lot of the development work, but I also brokered it with the Parks and Rec people, who are just a joy to work with. The same team later did Good Place for
Yeah.
another great TV series. But they wanted a game in story for their TV series, so we built Cones of Dunshire for them, and it was this wild game for 8 to 12 people. It was ridiculous, but it was this fun. It was this fun spoof of a game, and it was really kind of a cool game in its own crazy way, and a little bit of a race game, but there was a lot more depth there. And so
That's
we
hilarious.
kickstart. We decided we might kickstart that game, and that was the only Kickstarter I've actually done. Um, in terms of my own being part of a Kickstarter team, but we did it was so wildly expensive. Um, we wanted so much money for this game, and so few people really knew it. And how many people really want a game for 8 to 12 people? Really, so it was kind of doomed from the start. But we learned a lot about Kickstarter, and we had a great time, of course, with Parks and Recs guys, and actually seeing our game in the TV series being part of the plot.
Oh
And
man, it
then
was such a
the
funny plot.
expansion for that game ended up being in the series finale.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. But anyway, so the only Kickstarter I've actually been part of, was a miserable failure. But on the other hand, I've got a lot of friends that have done some very successful Kickstarters. Morgan just did one with, I mean, he did a design for, a really cool superhero game design. My friend Andrew Navarro, who used to run Fantasy Flight Games, just did a really awesome Kickstarter, and I've been part of that in terms of being kind of a consultant, but I've never done a successful Kickstarter, partly because we do Catan and we're lucky enough to be able to sell those games at a pretty steady level.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can imagine.
yeah. Last year, in fact, was the first year we ever manufactured more than 1 million Catan English language Catan board games.
So
Just
how many languages is Catan in right now?
40 some. Yeah.
So I have a little bit more to go. I have 3, so I got a long
There
ways
you
to
go.
go.
Yeah. 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 We're hoping for Basque someday, but I don't know. It'll be a while. But no, I backed Paris. I backed Pachacuna, which I talked about. I did back Lords of Vegas. I backed a few of these. I backed a few of the Calliope projects. It's I just don't have a lot of time, and I have so many games as it is that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I understand. I back a whole bunch. I usually back at a print and play level or something like that to show my support for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
designer.
yeah,
And then I download all the files and I try to get around to printing them off and making the game to play. And a lot of times, what I always find is like I'll be really obsessed with one of them. Like, man, I should just go buy this production copy. Then you can't find it because did they did enough to get
yeah,
get it out there, and that's like, man, I should have bought that production
yeah,
copy.
yeah, yeah. You never know. I mean, not every Kickstarter is going to be exploding kittens.
No, good grief, no,
Yeah,
no, or the next Awaken Realms game.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. No, but I think it's great that we're able to bring. We've seen gaming, at least in my career, grow into the electronic game, world, the electronic market, and computer based storytelling. And although that area has tons of growth opportunity because they still can't do a great role playing game online yet, or in a computer game context yet. Um, well, we've seen it grow into that and sort of expand the market of the game market, the game community through the electronic space, and now it's coming back into the analog space, and we're reaping the benefits of that, and it's only going to get better,
Yeah,
as we grow, as a culture, as we evolve, continue to evolve, because change is constant. We're going to see more and more gaming and Kickstarters, crowdfunding generally, I should say, gives people an opportunity to tell stories in a beautiful way, a meaningful way, without having to rely on the commercial distribution chain.
it's hard to get in.
Yeah, it is.
It,
It is. It says
it's yeah, it's not hard for you.
I've been well. Yeah, it does help. We got some traction. We got some shelf space early.
Yeah,
But again, we produce. I think Asmodee produces a lot of wonderful games, and a wide variety, and we have some amazingly creative studios. I've mentioned a few. Certainly, you know, you see some fantastic games coming out of different cultures. We've seen, of course, certainly a lot of great game design out of Europe. France and Belgium, Germany, and those places. Um, we've seen some really cool stuff coming out of Japan in the way of mini games, micro games, just really interesting games. Uh, you know, who would have ever thought they would pick up a great game called Fake Artist Goes to New York? But it's we've had the chance to get in there early, develop a really good distribution network, and with Catan, of course, we have a over 25-year-old game, now 27 years old,
Yeah.
that sort of pioneered that, that pathway, and it deserves its space as a gateway game into a really awesome culture.
No, I agree, and like I said, it's definitely will always have a special place in my gaming, in my shelf of just the game that really got me into the hobby, the game that is I've seen with all the expansions and stuff just keep evolving and changing and giving you new ways to play it. And to me, that's people want to complain about, the game's so great, it doesn't need an expansion. Well, then don't get it. But I'm
Right? You
telling
don't have
you,
to. You don't have to.
you
You don't
know, when you don't have to spend the money.
have.
Play
No.
whatever you want. But I love the fact that Catan's always got something new coming out, and it's a new way to augment and just change the way I play it every now and then. Like we said, the Seafarers and Cities and Knights combination. Oh my gosh, I would want to play that every time, but oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Then you can get. Yeah, you can get down into some rabbit holes here and there. I do want to do a shout out for people who don't know Settlers of America. That's a great game. It's a very different style of Catan
Hmm.
game. There are no victory points. It's all about who delivers your goods to the other players first. But it's a real interesting twist on the core Catan
Yeah,
mechanics.
everybody starts on the East Coast. You got to push west.
Yeah, and the East Coast, the resources get depleted. That
Hmm.
occurs also in Dawn of Humankind. The African continent, becomes less productive over time because that's how climate change affected Africa. In the case of Settlers of America, we just exhausted the land in the East in the beginning with bad agriculture practices and too many people. But that story is pretty well told in that game, and it's a really interesting game. So
No, it's fun.
yeah,
I think I've won that one only once. It's not.
yeah. But winning's way overrated. Come on.
Oh, absolutely. If it weren't for losing, I would never even bother playing a game.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. My dad kicked my tail pretty regularly in those 3M games when I first started, but that didn't mean I didn't have fun.
Oh, absolutely. My son beats me all the time. He's 9, and anything that's anywhere close to chess related, I might as well give up on. Like I have the old 3M game Feudal.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just lays waste to my army so fast. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
As he should.
there's gotta be a better way to do this. And he's like, I mean, you're trying. Like,
Yeah.
thanks,
Well,
buddy.
that's a good winner. You
Yeah.
should always be a good winner and a gracious winner and a gracious loser,
Oh yeah.
regardless of the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Pete, I'd like to thank you for being on my show with
Sure.
me today. I've had a great time talking with you and learning about Catan and how you got involved in this great industry that we are a part of.
Yeah.
If anybody wanted to reach out to you, how could they do that?
Goodness, that's a dangerous thing. Because I'm a pretty busy guy, and as you probably could tell, that was pretty hard. You can reach me through Catan Studio, and in that vein, I'm reachable by email, pete@catanstudio.com. But I'll be honest, yeah, we try and keep it kind of on the lowdown here because, well, if not, we end up a little overwhelmed with visitors, and it's okay. But we still are at work. I haven't retired yet, So we have two Swedes visiting Coleman, my friend, who's also our next door neighbor, who lives next to me in the studio here, and they're they're fans from way back. We get the odd visitor, but we the bottom line is we try and stay pretty private.
No, I don't blame you there.
And we don't, and I'm going to tell your listeners this: we don't solicit game designs because we just can't. It's overwhelming. And
Oh, I can imagine.
even when I was CEO at Mayfair Games, we learned that we just could not keep up with unsolicited designs or even solicited designs in most cases. If you have a great game idea, I'm not the guy to publish it at this point in my life. There are other great studios, and of course there's crowdfunding and any other ways to get your design to market. And I'm very supportive of I just say bring it on when it comes to new games. I get a kick out of all this great storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep making them. I'll keep buying them, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'll get around to playing them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wish your whole all your gaming friends and your audience the best and good gaming, and as the Zulu would say, ugiwawa.
And as usual, if you want to reach out to me, it's eatlunchandboardgame.com. Email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/eatlunchandboardgame. And remember, board games build bridges.
Stay in tune with all things sports around Indiana and the nation with the Crash Course Podcast. Each week, we tackle the big storylines from the world of the Colts, Pacers, and the Indiana college scene, while also keeping a pulse on the nation. We record live weekly at twitch.tv/3C Media and can be found on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can catch the Crash Course Podcast.
When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.